There's breaking news today. Speaker Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California, announced that the House of Representatives will be proceeding with an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. I don't know about you, but I hear hallelujah playing in my head. Finally. As Lizzo would say, it's about damn time. With a year to go, approximately, until the 2024 election, it seems like finally the House of Representatives is getting their act together and moving forth with the very necessary impeachment against our president for these allegations of corruption and bribery. There's a lot of evidence, contrary to what the mainstream media will tell you, that this corruption and bribery existed. We're going to get into what the mainstream media is saying in the wake of this announcement. It is truly absurd. But first is background. For those who don't know what an impeachment inquiry is, it is an investigation that occurs before the House of Representatives formally begins impeachment proceedings. The Constitution says that it is the job of the House of Representatives to do those proceedings. They decide through a vote whether the president is impeached. And then once the House impeaches the president, then a trial proceeds in the Senate. The Senate holds the impeachment trial, which will vote whether to convict or not convict, i.e., oust or not oust the President of the United States from office. Let's listen to a brief clip of Speaker Kevin McCarthy making this announcement this morning.
House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption. Now, here's what we know so far. Through our investigations, we have found that President Biden did lie to the American people about his own knowledge of his family's foreign business dealings. Eyewitnesses have testified that the president joined on multiple phone calls and had multiple interactions. Dinners resulted in cars and millions of dollars into his son's business partners. We know that bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family members and associates through various shell companies. These facts should concern all Americans. The American people deserve to know that the public offices are not for sale, and that the federal government is not being used to cover up the actions of a politically associated family. Now, I would encourage the president and his team to fully cooperate with this investigation in the interests of transparency. We are committed to getting the answers for the American public. Nothing more, nothing less. We will go wherever the evidence takes us. Thank you very much.
Possible articles of impeachment that could be brought against President Joe Biden include abuse of power, obstruction, and corruption. Speaker McCarthy is right that the American people should be concerned about this and alerted to it. I'm going to get into details of this bribery and corruption scandal in a moment, but it is arguably one of the greatest corruption and bribery scandals ever surrounding an American politician. It is just staggering. But sadly, there are many people, both in the mainstream media and affiliated with President Biden or supporters of President Biden, who are trying to shamelessly cover up for the president. For instance, Ian Sams, who is a spokesperson for the White House, he's on the legal team that will be representing and aiding President Biden during this alleged, or purported, I should say, impeachment. He tweeted, or X'd, I guess is the proper term now, that Republicans have, quote, turned up no evidence of wrongdoing by Biden, and that an impeachment inquiry is, quote, red meat for the extreme right wing. Okay, so anything that is anti Biden is, of course, not rooted in facts or evidence, but it is just this fodder for the extreme right wing to dig up on. It's like this idea of red meat, like the right wing are animals who are just descending on this piece of luscious sustenance, and they are trying to just consume all of it in their frenzied state of hating the president. It's absurd. Let's go to Representative Jamie Raskin, who is a Democrat in the House Oversight Committee, which is led by Republicans. So he is one of the people from the other side of the aisle in that committee. So he would be certainly aware of all of the evidence showing how corrupt our president is. And he has said that the evidence gathered, quote, overwhelmingly demonstrates no wrongdoing by President Biden and further debunks Republicans' conspiracy theories. In addition to these individuals, the mainstream media has been peddling this narrative that there's just no evidence of anything here, that Republicans are just making it up in their blind hatred of Democrats and Joe Biden. ABC News, in not a editorial piece, in a news piece, so they're supposed to be objectively conveying facts, wrote this morning, reporting on this story, quote, so far, Republicans have not been able to prove any wrongdoing by President Biden. It's just a lie. It really is just amazing, the ease with which they lie. CNN wrote also this morning, reporting on this, quote, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced Tuesday that he's calling on his committees to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, even as they have yet to prove allegations that he directly profited off of his son's foreign business deals. I did a whole Julie Noted episode on all that has been revealed through the various House Oversight Committee investigations, hearings, and what was also brought forth by 2 IRS whistleblowers. So you can catch that episode if you would like a really detailed summary of what has been revealed. But I'll give you the footnotes now, and you decide if it is indeed true, apropos of ABC News, CNN, Ian Sams, and Representative Jamie Raskin, that there's no evidence of all of wrongdoings pertaining to the president. First, there's Romania, one of the many countries that allegedly President Biden has gotten payoffs from. The Biden family received approximately $3 million from a company that is controlled by a corrupt Romanian national, Gabriel Popovicu. This money was transferred to Robinson Walker, which is one of the 20 shell companies or LLCs that were founded during the time of Joe Biden's vice presidency under the Obama administration. So $3 million from this corrupt Romanian national went to the Hunter Biden shell company, the LLC, and then from there, this money was dispersed to various members of the Biden family. Payments stopped from this Romanian national as soon as Vice President Biden left the office of the vice presidency. I'll show in a moment that there actually is a direct line between payments and President Biden, but even in this case of Romania, where the money was funneled to the LLC and then it was dispersed among Biden family members, it's really important that people understand that in matters of corruption and bribery and payoffs, people involved are not so stupid as to, in every dealing, make a direct line between person X and person Y. In other words, both the Biden family and the corrupt people with whom they are doing business are going to be intelligent enough to know that they ought to disguise this a certain way. This is why the presence of the LLCs or those shell companies were so important, because the money could just be funneled, given to those different companies, and it could look like they were legitimate business dealings. And it seems a lot less scary or a lot less corrupt than if that Romanian national had just wired that money to President Biden's bank account. Also, we know, thanks to recent reports that were actually for a long time suppressed, but finally made available to the public, while President Biden was VP and even into his time as presidency, he had all of these pseudonyms, these different emails that he was using to communicate with his son about his foreign business dealings. Also, as Speaker McCarthy noted in that video that I played, President Biden said repeatedly on the 2020 campaign trail and during his time as the president of the United States that he had no evidence of his son's foreign business dealings. Okay? Total lie. The emails indicate otherwise. Let's go to China. China is arguably the biggest source of corrupt revenue for the Biden family. In 2017, after Vice President Biden left the vice presidency, Hunter, his son, had a meeting with Ye Jianming, who is a founder and owner of the CEFC Chinese energy company. Like many other companies in China, I should say, like all companies in China, this one has strong ties to the Communist Party. Companies can only exist in China if the Communist Party gives the okay. And this individual, Ye Jianming, is actually quite close with none other than the corrupt authoritarian President Xi Jinping of China. He and Xi Jinping really started the Belt and Road Initiative, where China goes into other countries and tries to develop them and create these bases in order to essentially have dominance over those countries. So Hunter has this meeting with this Chinese energy tycoon. Why would he need to have a meeting with this guy in the first place? We all know why. After that meeting, Ye Jianming gave the first son a 3-carat diamond, and according to emails exposed from the Hunter Biden laptop story, which remember was apparently Russian disinformation. Yeah, right. According to those emails, Ye Jianming promised Hunter Biden, quote, $10 million annually for at least 3 years, with a return promise of Hunter Biden making, quote, introductions. So he's using his daddy's position as a high-up member of the U.S. government to cash in on this foreign money. So let's say the $10 million just went to Hunter Biden, which doesn't seem really to be plausible because, as I'm going to get to in a moment, there's actually an email trail showing that 10% went to Joe Biden. But let's say even that 10 million just went to Hunter Biden alone. That is incredibly corrupt. To have Joe Biden's stature and connections in the U.S. government be used by his family to cash in, even if that money didn't directly go to President Biden. That's the thing about bribery. People think that with bribery, the money has to go directly to the person who is being investigated for bribery and corruption. As long as that money goes where that person in question wants the money to go, then it counts as bribery and corruption. So again, even if that money didn't go to President Biden, he wanted it to go to his family and to his son. So that counts. And it's only through President Biden's stature that that money is even getting to the Biden family in the first place. So then in a later email, it shows that actually the money, it seems, did go to President Biden. Quote, there's an email saying that, quote, 10% will be held by Hunter for the big guy. Hunter Biden's ex-business partners, James Gillar and Tony Boblinsky, testified under oath that, quote, the big guy is none other than Joe Biden. Later in that year, 2017, the State Energy HK Limited Company, which is the kind of parent company of CEFC, the company of Ye Jianming, wired $3 million to Robinson Walker, LLC, and less than 2 months after that, Vice President Joe Biden left office. We know that $800,000 of that money went to Walker, the business associate of Hunter and the part of the namesake of the LLC. $600,000 went to Hunter Biden. $300,000 went to James Biden, the brother of the now president, and $25,000 went to Haley Biden, who is, I believe, the daughter-in-law or ex-daughter-in-law of President Joe Biden. She was married, I believe, to Beau Biden. Okay, going on, and my gosh, I'd just like to remind you that CNN and ABC News and many leading Democrats are saying that there's no evidence whatsoever, no proof of wrongdoing by the president. It's sick. It's a sick lie. WhatsApp has these messages that the House Oversight Committee obtained, where Hunter Biden told a CEFC employee, that's the Chinese energy company, named Raymond Zhao, that he was sitting next to his father. And he texted, quote, we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. So in other words, even though these Chinese nationals wired the Biden family millions of dollars, Hunter and Joe were apparently not happy and they wanted more. So they say they'd like to understand why the commitment has not been fulfilled. Reading from Hunter's text, quote, "I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand. And now means tonight. And Z," Hunter says, "if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my decision." Yet another smoking gun of seemingly pretty clear evidence that Joe Biden was colluding with his son to engage in these corrupt dealings, in large part because of his stature and the ability to provide favors in exchange for this cash. And it worked, because a few months after that text exchange, several more millions of dollars were transferred to the Biden family. Shall I go on to Ukraine? Burisma is a energy company in Ukraine that Hunter Biden served on the board of, getting a $1 million annual salary, even though he knows nothing about Ukraine or doesn't have any experience pertaining to energy. The CEO of Burisma, Mykola Zlochevsky, testified to the FBI that he was forced by the Biden family to pay them $10 million. $5 million, he said, to Hunter. $5 million, he said, to Joe Biden. Why? Well, it was a deal. It was an exchange that he would pay the Bidens money, and in return, Vice President Joe Biden would use his position as the VP of the United States and the head of Ukrainian-American relations under the Obama administration to fire a prosecutor in Ukraine who was going after Burisma, to investigate Burisma for corruption. This prosecutor was Viktor Shokin. So the Bidens allegedly said to Zlochevsky, the CEO of Burisma, "We will use our power to make this prosecutor go away if you give us a payout in return." Zlochevsky testified to the FBI that the funds allocated to Joe Biden were not sent directly to the father Biden because, I don't know, they didn't want to be found out. And it confirms what I was saying earlier, that there are all these backdoor clandestine channels, because even senile Joe Biden is not so senile to realize that a direct line would implicate him, so ought to go through the back door. Finally, and there are many more examples to give of evidence and proof, but here's the final one. These IRS whistleblowers that testified before the House of Representatives, Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler. They said that the Department of Justice was putting up roadblocks pertaining to the IRS's investigation of Hunter Biden over tax evasion. These roadblocks included tipping off Hunter Biden's legal team for a planned search, delaying warrants to investigate some of Hunter Biden's possessions and technology. Also, these whistleblowers say that they were instructed by the Department of Justice, the Department of Injustice, to avoid questions about President Joe Biden and his alleged dealings with Hunter, and they were not given evidence such as the laptop. So there appears to be some severe improprieties with regard to the Department of Justice. But here's what's relevant to the impeachment story, i.e. President Biden's involvement in this. They testified that the president, Joe Biden, was present at various investigation meetings between the IRS and his son, or those representing his son. So in other words, according to these whistleblowers, President Biden was using his power to tip the scales, to influence a lesser or shorter or mitigated investigation into his son. Seems like a pattern, don't you think? It was also discovered that Matthew Graves, who is a U.S. attorney for D.C., who was appointed by President Biden, and the whistleblowers say that he had a big say, even though he wasn't supposed to, in the IRS and in the Department of Justice, whether Hunter Biden would face charges. It was found out that his wife, Matthew Graves' wife, Fatima Gross Graves, visited the White House 10 times at least in the first 3 months of 2023. It shows again and again that they do these shady things, but they don't leave an overt paper trail. it seems that this Fatima Gross Graves was going to the White House 10 times to meet with the president to talk about the investigation into Hunter Biden, which her husband was involved in. Why else would the wife of the main guy who would be dealing with or deciding the charges against Hunter Biden, why else would the wife of this person need to visit the White House 10 times in the first 3 months of 2023, the exact time that the IRS and the DOJ were deciding whether to press charges? If you don't think that's shady, I don't know what to tell you. And finally, for those who may think, well, those IRS whistleblowers were just Republican hacks, Republican informants trying to make up these lies to allegedly expose the president. Well, one of them, Joseph Ziegler, testified, and there's evidence showing that we have every reason to believe that he is right about this. He testified that he's a Democrat, a gay Democrat. And he was so taken aback and so disgusted by this political maneuvering within the DOJ and the IRS that he had to come out and say something, even against the Democratic president and his son. Reading from the testimony of Joseph Ziegler, quote, "I was the lead IRS case agent on the Hunter Biden investigation. I'm a Democrat who happens to be married to a man." Ziegler said that somehow people think that his position as a gay Democrat gives him more credibility in this testimony. He says, "The truth is that my credibility today comes from my job experience with the IRS and my intimate knowledge of the agency's standards and procedures. I was raised and have always tried to do what is right. Although I do have my supporters, others have said that I am a traitor to the Democratic Party and that I'm causing more division in our society. I implore you to consider that if you were put in my position with the facts as I have stated them, you ask yourself if you would be doing the exact same thing." Thank you, Joseph Ziegler, for doing the right thing despite whatever partisan loyalties or proclivities you have. If only the mainstream media and leading Democrats and people close to the Bidens had the same integrity. We will see what happens, and we will certainly keep you updated on the impending impeachment. Thanks for joining me. Take care.